Welcome. I'm so excited about today's conversation. I have Susy Flory with me. Let me give you some background. Susy and I go back a whole 3 years, but we share a really interesting journey. We're both writers, but that's not really what we had in common when we met. We met at Northern Seminary as part of the inaugural doctoral cohort under Dr. Lynn Cohick. What was the name of the cohort? What was our program? Women leadership.
Women, something with leadership. I don't remember exactly.
Isn't that funny? Well, the reason we don't remember is because that cohort kind of disintegrated after the first year, and everybody kind of went their own way. But Susie and I both ended up together at Houston Christian to finish out our doctorate together, and we will both graduate this fall. So, very exciting. And it has been just really fun to watch what Susie's been doing in the meantime. And one of the things that she's been doing in her spare time, which that's a joke because we're both in doctoral work and there's not a lot of that when you add your regular job on top of it. But she has been producing this book, Jesus Was. So, Susie, thanks for being here. Thanks for doing this. It's going to be fun.
Yeah,
Uh,
thanks for having me, Kelly. I'm so excited.
this will be great. So, tell us about Jesus Was. What is the premise of the book?
So this was a book that I think just wanted to be born because no one planned for it. It's kind of
Okay.
like the unexpected pregnancy. That's what this book is. Years ago, so I'm going to say 4 years ago now, maybe 5 years ago, I was on Facebook, and I am not a person who shares a lot of personal things, and I don't rant on Facebook. You see
We're
some people who are upset about things in the world, and maybe kind of activist types, and they post these
mhm.
long posts that raise emotion and all of that.
we
I
all
don't do
we all know
yeah,
them.
yeah, and I don't judge that. There's a time and a place to to speak your piece, but I am not
Mhm.
like that. So there were some things going on in the world, as always happens, and there was a cycle of sort of intense upheaval, I would say, in the US, and a lot of disagreement on things. So people, when I opened up my Facebook that particular day and looked at the feed, there was just a lot of these rants, a lot of upset people commenting.
Mhm.
It was really truly mudslinging, and this is even after I try to sort of curate my feed from people who
Right.
are, you know what I mean. So this was just a day, and I wanted to say something about an event that had just happened. But I didn't want to be one of those people who rants. It's just not me. And
Mhm.
so the only thing I could think of to say was something about Jesus. And
Mhm.
now, how do you say something about Jesus without preaching, without sounding holier than thou, without, offending a lot of your audience who doesn't want to be preached at? So I just wrote three words, and the words were Jesus was nonviolent. That was the only thing I could think of to say, the only
Okay.
thing I wanted to say in response. I put a period and I posted it. And I thought, okay, I've said something. You
Did you feel
know, I
better?
I felt better
Good.
because
Okay.
when you're talking about Jesus
Sometimes you
and
just have to get it out too.
100%, I did want
Mhm.
to say something. And
Mhm.
people can take it however they wanted. It wasn't particularly aimed at a person or anything like that.
How was it
So
received?
so immediately responses were coming, and part of me was like, I said something, yay. The other part of me was like, I'm going to get slammed because that is
Mhm.
the climate right now. I just
Right.
expected people to argue using this post, and it didn't turn out that way. So what happened
Mhm.
was people posted agreeing with it, asking questions, engaging. It literally was like maybe you're at a coffee shop and a little conversation starts, and then people are just kind of chiming in. And it was just the most positive experience around,
Okay.
stuff that was crazy at the time. And I thought, you know, it's a good experience. And so I posted another Jesus was, and then a word or two the next day, and the same thing happened. And so I just thought,
Okay.
well, this is something.
How
So
long did you keep going?
I did it for 30 days. Because
Okay.
there is a million things you can say about Jesus. As you know, from being
Yeah.
in school, when we
Yeah.
study his life, there's just more and more and more that comes up.
Hmm.
And so for 30 days, yeah, that happened on my Facebook
Wow.
program.
Okay. So obviously, this book came out of that. So you said Jesus was, and you were referring to Jesus at the time of his earthly ministry, the, the characteristics that he displayed, right? Have
That's
you
right.
gotten any response as to, like, well, wait a minute, he's still alive. Why don't you say Jesus is?
Yeah, that was one of the key responses on the first day. That it
Mm,
was just curiosity.
okay.
Why are you saying Jesus was? Because if you're a person of faith, and I believe that Jesus is still alive. I believe in the resurrection and that he is still alive. So people were wondering, what exactly are you trying to say here? And
Uh-huh.
really, the answer is what you said. Let's look at who he was on earth, what he said, and what he did. And then that's what we're going to focus on rather than all the layers of doctrine that begin to just accumulate when you come from different backgrounds. It becomes hard to have a conversation about Jesus because you're talking about all that versus
Mhm.
the basics.
Okay. So 30 days, lots of responses. Obviously, it got your wheels turning. How long between that and your idea to let's turn this into a book? So, how did that part happen?
Yeah, that was not my idea. Even at that point, I was like, this
Hmm.
is fun to talk about. And
Uh-huh.
I'm getting to contribute to this conversation with people who were unchurched. I mean, clearly just coming in to ask questions. People who've been hurt by the church and were out of the church, and people from different faiths. So it kind of went across all kinds of people, which surprised me also. Because when you bring up Jesus, that can be something that can
Oh, yeah.
divide people. One of my cohort at the time at at Northern Seminary in the master's program is a pastor.
Okay.
His name is Scott Johanningsmeyer, and he pastors a small church of 12 or 13 people called Elizabeth Baptist Church in a cornfield in Indiana. And you literally, I
Mm.
think, drive down a gravel road to this beautiful 100-year-old church of 12 people. And he
Wow.
said, I want to preach Jesus Was series. I'm going to make it a series
Mm.
and I'm going to preach through it for a couple of months. And I thought, really? That
Wow.
what you're going to
Yeah.
preach
Who
through
knew?
Facebook posts, as an inspiration. And he did it. And I said, can you record some of these? I want to see them just for curiosity. And I'd never
Hmm.
seen him preach. He was a fellow student. And I just was touched by what he did with it. And
Okay.
so, not long after that, somehow that idea just floated into us. Maybe this should be a book.
Well, and if you notice on the bottom, you two are listed as the co-editors. So you obviously collaborated on this project. And as editors, that means you're not the authors necessarily, although you did contribute a chapter. How did you gather other writers?
So we excited. The that's the easy answer. It's kind of a sales thing. But they had, because we were friends on Facebook, like you and I are, they had seen a little bit of this, because after a while, when you do something every day, it feels like the
Hmm.
algorithm will eventually show you, when it's
Yeah.
a friend. So they were kind of aware what was going on. They were sometimes, chiming in on the conversations. And when we thought about making it a book, they just caught the idea. And what happened, Kelly, was in our seminary program, there was a lot of Paul, a lot of sort of basic theology, Old Testament, all that stuff, Greek. There wasn't a ton of Jesus
Mm,
because there's been a lot of scholarly interest in Paul for a long time.
yeah.
And I feel like that spotlight has been a little bit off of Jesus. Right now, I feel like it's shifting back for some reason. I feel like that's what we need right now, and it goes far beyond Jesus was.
So, who wrote the forward?
Our friend,
Yes.
Scott McKnight.
Yes, and he for sure helps us refocus on the person of Jesus in our studies, as we well know from our last year of classes and all of the books that he's been writing in the last few years. So, yeah, awesome. So, you gathered, are all of the all the writers, the contributors, are they from the seminary class or are they just most of them? Are there others?
Yeah, there are 19 of us total, so we're a gang of
Hmm.
19. So what you take Scott and I out, there's 17 contributors. All of them are from Northern Seminary, grads of
Okay.
Northern. The majority were in our cohort, but a lot, you take classes with all different kinds of
Hmm.
students in the program. And so we had just gotten to know them and we invited them, and the majority said yes, they'd like to do it.
Okay. So, how long did it take for all of the content to come together before you were ready to? And how did you find a publisher?
Yeah,
Like,
so
this is
that's
just
that's
real niche questions here. Yeah,
that is
publishers and
the
writers.
question. Yeah, I don't think publishers are lining up to publish seminary student books, right? Like that's
Well, you
not a
found
huge.
somebody.
So we
All
tried
right. I'm not going to give it away.
tried hard. We wrote a book proposal. It's like 50 pages, like, a serious kind of a document. So we created that. We It was shopped around. Our agent said that Jesus books only go to pastors and they go to large church pastors. So you can imagine, I haven't asked Scott this question, but how that felt to him. Like, no, your
Mm,
church is too small. But she said, it's probably not going to happen, but we'll try. And so we did not have high hopes. And a year or two later, there was some interest from a publisher, but then they went, dark. So we prepared to self publish. And that was a big commitment because that means we were going to put out our own money. And it was Scott and
yeah.
I. This was not like we weren't going to go ask our contributors for
Hmm.
money. So we were ready. We had found a publisher we were going to be paying. Neither of us really had the money, but we were committed. And at that moment, that one publisher that was interested rose up again, and it just all came together over a
Okay.
course of about 3 years.
Okay. All right. And that publisher
So
is Kriegel. I've published with them several times. They're a great team. So I'm excited that they gave you guys a shot. And this book is not out yet. We are recording this in late August, so we have another week or two before this is out. We're gonna try to get this video out as quickly as possible, just to give all of our listeners, viewers, readers a chance to hear about it, and then go pre-order it or order it whenever you discover this little interview. So I got the privilege. Susy asked me to endorse it, and I got an early copy of it and was just thrilled. I love the premise, the focus on our actual Savior. Sometimes I feel like in theology and Bible teachings, we can get into the weeds on any character and then the theology. Paul, like you were saying, Paul and Peter, even there's so much to unpack. And then sometimes we just sort of forget about the Gospels because they're stories, right? And stories are harder to interpret than like 1, 2, 3 teaching, right? That are super lays it out for you that we get in the letters. So yeah. Anyway, I just love it. If we're supposed to live like Jesus, we need to know what Jesus was like, right? So, and I think that this book really lays it out in a very creative way. It's not, I don't know, it's not super logical, like one step, two step, but you guys really found different aspects of his character, his personality, and his actions to highlight. What's your favorite chapter, other than the
my
one you wrote?
my own chapters would never be my favorite. I'm
Oh,
like
okay.
one of those people that never goes back and reads my own stuff just because you're so
Okay.
hard on yourself. I don't know if you're that way, Kelly. But
I haven't
my
read my books. Yeah.
see, it's like if you make
Okay.
movies
I
and
get it. I get it.
you don't want to go back and watch yourself act, like that type of thing. My favorite chapter right now is actually two chapters, and this is from an author named Amanda Weber. And
Hmm.
the most they could write was 2 chapters because we wanted this to be a collaborative effort. We didn't want one
Hmm.
person dominating. She turned in a very long chapter for one of her chapters, and it was called Jesus Was a Winemaker. And it was double the amount of words that it was supposed to be. So Scott and I, as editors, were faced with a decision. This is before it goes to Kriegel. Do we cut this down to size? Do we ask Amanda to cut it down? Or do we just say, try again, Amanda? And as we read through it, we debated, Scott and I, and finally we thought, no, we got to run this entire thing. That's how much we loved it. So it became a part one
Okay.
and a part two, and it's the only
Yes, it is.
chapter like that. And she just, I don't think she could have cut it down and
Hmm.
had the same
Okay.
effect. Yeah, yeah. And as a writer, what I loved is it's more of a literary style of writing.
Mm, okay.
So a lot of theologians, seminary professors, scholars, they write very simple, straightforward, almost like a
Yeah.
scientific. Her writing is lyrical and beautiful. And so
Okay.
I loved it for that. And it's just so creative. And she said she came up with a theology of wine, which is not a new thing. Like that has
Yeah.
been,
No, no.
something
Hmm.
or new to me. And she basically said, does wine have a story to tell me about God that I do not know? And so right there, she has me with that question. And she describes Jesus. She said it's a very complex metaphor. And again, as writers, we love a good metaphor.
Hmm.
She said Jesus is described as a vintner, vine dresser, as the true vine himself, and as the fruit of the vine. So every part of this wine making process has been used as a metaphor in scripture, usually repeated several times,
Hmm.
of God originating that, being that, and then Jesus, the fruit of that. And it just
Hmm.
blew me away that you could use wine to talk about Jesus.
Fun. My son is reading a history book, and it's like the history of the world in 6 glasses, which meaning 6 different drinks over the course of history, and wine is one of them.
Wow.
And so I will have to read this chapter, which I don't remember it from reading it months ago, and then see if that's something that I can throw into his little wheelhouse and give him a Christian kind of spin on, okay, wine was important in culture, but hey, so that'll be really fun. What what do you want people to come away with when they read this book?
So for me, I grew up in the church. Not everyone did, but I did. And
Mhm.
I grew up hearing stories about Jesus. The parables that he told, the miracles that he did, some of the interactions. As a kid, you hear a little bit of it, maybe not always the full interaction. The flannel graphs, like the little
Yeah.
pictures that are on the bulletin board. All of that was a part of my childhood. And so
Hmm.
I felt steeped in that as well as other stories in the Bible. And as I got older, that seemed to fade for me. And it became much more the big ideas. So, all the big abstract theological ideas about redemption and propitiation and,
All the big
all of
words.
the ologies, pneumatology,
Hmm.
eschatology, all the stuff. And then all the Paul stuff, which is really out there and abstract a lot of times. And I just sort of forgot that Jesus was a real person, not
Mm.
an idea. Yes, there's big ideas. We need to talk about this, but I just kind of forgot. I couldn't grasp anymore. I think it was just gone that he was a real person who lived on this earth, who did things that we do every day. He ate, he combed his hair, he brushed his teeth, all the things.
Hmm.
He talked to people every day of his life. He interacted with people. He taught people, once he started teaching, that was his life. I just forgot that. And so my hope is that people read this book and re-encounter that Jesus, the real tangible one, and to begin to think about what he was like as a person, and what his message was and how he lived it out. But just that he was real. I think
Yeah.
I love history. I'm more of a history
Yeah.
person and a culture person than a big ideas of theology
Hmm.
person. And that's what I always want to do in my work is bring people to life. That's my hope and my
Hmm.
dream for Jesus was.
Introducing Jesus the person, Jesus the human, who is also divine, but walked and talked, and helping us get a more tangible hold, a grasp of who he was when he was here in the
Mhm.
flesh. Yeah, that's awesome. So it's not out yet. What day is release day?
It comes out September 23rd.
Oh, okay. So we have a couple more weeks than I was
We
thinking.
do.
So, of course, who knows when this will actually be live on online. So we'll see how quickly we can get this out. But I assume you can buy this pretty much anywhere you can find books, right?
Yes, you can order it. You can buy it in any of the online retailers. And then you can
Mhm.
also find it. I have a little part of my website, the JesusWasBook.com.
Great.
And then we have a Substack newsletter and a podcast called Jesus Was. So it'll always be there. If you just plug in Jesus Was, hopefully we'll pop up somewhere.
Yes. Tell me real quick about the podcast.
Yeah, so the podcast, we are interviewing each of the contributors, and we're going to interview a
It's going
few
to be great.
others as well, I think. But I just interviewed Amanda Weber about Jesus was a winemaker, and it was such a fun conversation because she grew up not drinking alcohol, not drinking
Mhm.
wine, and that was not part of her life. So that it's fresh in my mind. So it's just so fun to hear
Okay.
the voices that you read their writing voice in Jesus Was.
Yes. Is the podcast live, or have y'all already started releasing episodes?
Yes, we it started
Okay.
a couple weeks ago, and I think we'll put out about one a week.
Okay, great. So we will include a link to that in the post here. So we have stuff to watch, stuff to listen to, and eventually something to read. So go ahead and pre order or order the book and get a better, tangible sense of who Jesus was when he was here. Thanks, Susie. This is great.
Thanks,
So
Kelly.
I'll see you at graduation for sure.
That's right. We're going to celebrate.
That's awesome. All right. Take care.